started out, I work in the entertainment industry. Go me, I guess. My parents are very proud. But I started out as a PA, which is where everybody starts out. It's the shittiest of all possible jobs. You have to do things like hold people's teeth, or get adult diapers for someone, or buy hemorrhoid cream. All three things I did on several occasions. But the worst day of my life as a production assistant, I was working at Jimmy Kimmel Live. And this was before it was like cool Jimmy Kimmel Live. This was like first 2 years when everybody was like the joke. But I was still really excited to be there, and I was willing to do anything. Like, I was the only girl on staff, really. There was like one other assistant who was a girl. Everybody else was dudes. And I was like, I am fucking game for anything. I will not be judged by my vag. Whatever you throw at me, I'm totally fine. So there was a run. PAs go out on runs. And there was a run, and all the PAs who had been there for a while said no to the run. And I was like, well, I'm a lady doing it for herself, so I'll do it. So I had to go meet with this producer, and he was like, oh, you're going to this celebrity's house, and you have to pick up a video. And I was like, oh, okay, why didn't anybody else want to do that? And he's like, don't worry about it. And I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, hey, do me a favor. If you're there after 5 minutes, just call me. And I was like, what do you mean if I'm there after 5 minutes? He's like, well, if you get there and you get stuck there, just call me, and I'll send someone for you. And I was like, what? Okay. Why? And he was like, no, it'll be fine. I probably should have sent a guy, but you seem really enthusiastic, so I'll send you. So I went to go pick up this video, and I'm not going to tell you the name of the guy, but he's this really shitty comedian who's awful and terrible. And so I went to his house, and I was like, whatever, it's fine. So I went to West Hollywood, which is where he was an office, but it was really an apartment. And I was looking for apartment J. And then I get to this apartment in like the shitty, like before WeHo was cool, like WeHo used to be a shithole, and that's where this was. So it was like a lot of drug dealers and whores and me looking for apartment J. So I'm walking around and I can't find apartment J because there are no numbers or letters on any of the doors. And then from like across, like half a mile away, I see this gigantic 400-pound Samoan guy staring at me. And I'm like, oh, that's a little unnerving. So I turn around and I look back and he's fucking right here. Like I don't know how he moved that fast to this day. He's here and he's towering over me. And I'm a big lady. And he's like towering over me. He said, what the fuck do you want? And I was like, nothing. No, I'm not. Nothing. I'm not. No. And then he looks at my hand and I have like apartment J. Oh, shit. I shouldn't have said his name. Fuck. Pretend you didn't hear that. Shit. So, secret's out. He's a douchebag. So, apartment J. So I was like, no, I'm just looking for that. And he's like, oh, what a coincidence. I'm going there too. And I was like, I don't think that you are. And he grabbed the back of my neck and forces me into an apartment with my one hand pinned behind me and the back of my neck. He's got me. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'm going to get raped and murdered now because that's just what happens. And I go in and it's completely empty apartment. And he pushes me down on this couch. And he says, wait here. And I was like, oh, am I waiting to be raped now? Is that what's happening? Like, I have to wait for you to come back? And then he screams, I can just say now, he screams, somebody's here. And nobody comes. And I'm like, okay, I think I have the wrong apartment. I'm looking for apartment. I just have to pick up this video. And he's like, oh, I know what you're doing. The editor's in the back working on it. And I'm like, oh, okay, should I just go back there? And he's like, I wouldn't. And I was like, I'm going to get the fuck out of here. So I'm going to go back there and see if this is really where an editor would work. So I go back in, and there's this guy watching porn on a computer. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And he wasn't doing anything, but he was like naked. And I was like, I'm sorry. I thought that this was, and he was like, oh, are you from Jimmy Kimmel? And I was like, yes. And he was like, yeah, you're in the right place. It's, I'm working on it, so it'll be another like half hour. And I was like, cool story. So I grab my phone and I start dialing Ken Crosby, the producer, to tell him I'm not going to be leaving in 5 minutes, send help. But the Samoan guy comes by and he says, oh, you don't need that phone. And I was like, but I do though, because I got to call my work. And he's like, they know. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, how many PAs have been sent here to be raped and murdered by this big Samoan guy? So I'm sitting there, and there's a very long couch, and I'm sitting to the side, and this guy is sitting right next to me, like on top of me, just breathing on my neck. And I'm like, I wonder how much longer it's going to be. Suddenly the door slams open, his brother comes in, and he's not wearing shoes, and he's bleeding. There's like a trail of blood. And I'm like, do you have the video? And he's like, what? No, but I got all this cocaine. And I'd never seen these people before. It's like my day 3 of working at Jimmy Kimmel Live. I can't go back without this video. I've made a commitment to myself. So I sit there and he's like, do you want some? And I was like, oh, I'm gonna pass. There's like a hard pass on like your shitty Coke. So he puts his feet up on the table and rips open this gigantic, like, you know, like Breaking Bad style bags of like all the Coke in the world. So he rips it open and the Samoan guy grabs it from him and they struggle over it and it splits open, covering me in cocaine. And the guy's like, oh, I'll just do it off you. And I was like, no thanks. I get paid $90 a day. No, thank you. So he starts like wiping me off, like just wiping me off and wiping me off. And then he gets this little like ball of Coke and his feet were on there bleeding. So now he's making this like line filled with blood and Coke. And he starts snorting that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go see about that video. So I go back in and the guy's still watching girl-on-girl porn. And I'm like, guy, I need to leave. And he was like, no, it's fine. Meanwhile, comes in, goes upstairs. A guy, like a young guy follows him, takes his shirt off at the bottom of the stairs, and goes up. And I'm like, that's weird. So I'm sitting there, this guy's doing all this Coke, this Samoan guy's breathing down my neck, and I just want the video to prove that I'm not useless as a PA. So I'm sitting there, more and more guys just come in, take off their shirt, go upstairs. Come in, take off their shirt, go upstairs. There's like 10 guys. And the more guys come in, the more I feel like I'm gonna be a witness now. Like I'm gonna have to testify and it's awful, I don't wanna do that. So finally I'm like, I gotta get out of here. Then I hear, that's actually perfect, because that's what I heard. I heard like this metal ping. And I was like, oh, what a weird noise to hear in this shit apartment. And everybody stands up and says, it's time to feed the king. And I'm like, what is the king? What is happening? All the shirtless guys, they all come running down, and the big Samoan guy goes into a closet and pulls out this huge thing filled with a gigantic boa constrictor, who apparently is king. And I'm actually fine. Like, I did like lizards for girls, like camps when I was a kid, so I'm fine with the snake. What's bothering me more is how ravenous all of the guys are about seeing the king. So one of them goes in the kitchen, the source of the ding. They pull out this rat, which is flailing about on this trap. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if that's dead yet. And they were like, that's how he likes it. Boom. And they pop open the thing. The rat falls into the king's cage. And like snakes don't do anything ever. So he was just like hanging out. And they started screaming, eat, 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 eat. And I'm like, I don't get paid enough for this. So finally one of them's like, oh, he can't smell the rat. So he takes the rat out of the cage, takes the same knife that he was cutting the Coke with, and chops off his leg. So now I'm sprayed with rat blood. And I'm like, this is not worth it for reals. So I run into the guy's room, the editor's room, and I'm like, I need the tape. At this point, he's jerking off. So he's jerking it to lady on lady porn. And I'm like, I need the tape. You've got to give me the tape. Like, eyes closed, like my mama told me, when you walk into a guy that you don't know who's jerking off. And I was like, I just need the tape. And he was like, all right, relax. It's been done for like 20 minutes. And then he like switches hands and hands me the tape. But at this point, I have no self-respect because I'm covered in cocaine and rat's bloods and like Samoan dude's breath. So I just take the tape and I run back. And now I realize I've been gone for an hour and 45 minutes. So I get back to Check Him Alive and I go up to the producer and I'm like steaming mad. And he's like, hey, that took a while. And I'm like, get fucked, Ken. Don't ever send me back there. And he was like, oh, but you handled it like a champ. Way to prove yourself. And part of me felt really good about that. And Ken was a drinker. And he had this bottle of like old whiskey that was worth, it was a gift from Jimmy, and it was worth about $600. So when we were doing the show that night, I stole the bottle of whiskey from Ken. And I don't love whiskey, but that whiskey tasted like sweet, sweet revenge.